Hello and welcome to the Grand Line Review, your source for everything One Piece. My name is Liam and rather awkwardly I don't have any bread today. We're currently in lockdown and the bread just didn't get delivered. So sadly, Tony Toaster will have to go hungry. But perhaps he will be able to sustain himself on the nourishment provided in chapter 1025. The out of context summary for which is as follows. All aboard the Wano tour bus. Please keep your rubber limbs inside the dragon at all times. If you look to your left, you'll see a cyborg dinosaur with his gimp. If you look to your right, you'll spot an enraged grandmother about to eat some troublemaking whippersnappers. Oh, and if you look straight ahead, you'll see nothing because my eyes are not open and nothing could possibly go wrong. Chapter 1025 was a very interesting trip down Wano Town, and please do feel free to tip your guide by subscribing to the Grand Line Review, which will result in consistent injections of One Piece culture administered directly into your YouTube feed. Also, this video is of course part of September, where for the entire month of September, every time someone subscribes to this channel, we will be donating 10 cents to Make-A-Wish Australia, a group who work to grant life-changing wishes for children with critical illness. There's also a link in the description to our fundraising page if you'd like to donate directly, and furthermore, please do say hi in the comments below if you are a new member of the Grand Fleet. Welcome. All of that aside though, chapter 1025 was actually pretty phenomenal. It accomplished everything that your ideal One Piece chapter is capable of. It had an epic action moment with the Luffy Yamato team up, we had a pretty hefty reveal with this whole Oni race business, there was some hard-hitting drama thrown in there with some more of Yamato's flashback, and to top all of it off, it was more or less uncontrollably hilarious from start to finish. How does One Piece do this? We literally just saw a man get crucified on the previous page, and now on the next we're just onto hilarious dragon shenanigans. That balance is not easy to strike. In terms of priorities, I always like to start with reveals, so Yamato and Kaido finally confirmed to be not human. Maybe, I don't know, I've probably used the word confirmed a bit too liberally there. But ever since Kaido was introduced, there's been fairly strong speculation that he is, well, a something else. It was just very specifically odd of Oda to label him as the world's strongest creature. But as it turns out, Kaido is, well, he's exactly what he looks like, which is an Oni. But just a quick note on this, Viz translates Oni as ogre, which is fine because the concept of an Oni, well, it can be very difficult to explain to the Western world. So ogre or demon, they're both very simple ways of getting to that point, even if ogre is a bit, you know, what are you doing in my swamp? This is very much where my inner weeb takes over, though I'm going to keep referring to them as Oni because I know that's exactly what we're talking about. It's even in the name of the island, Onigashima, which in and of itself is taken from the Momotaro tale, where a boy needs to go and fight Oni. But having said this word about a billion times, what is an Oni? Well, in funky Japanese mythology, an Oni is a kind of mishmash of things. Imagine what you get when you mix a demon, an orc, a goblin, and a troll together. What you get is a big effing mess, and that mess is called an Oni. Now, all of this is very vague at the moment, and this whole Oni thing could still have roots to races we already know, such as the ancient giants. But just like with Japanese folklore, Kaido references the general tension, shall we say, between humans and Oni. So that leads me to believe that they are, or at least they were, an established race of their own. Meaning that there may be a potential Oni homeland in the world, perhaps featuring more Kaidos or even Kaidai, I guess might be the plural. That does feel a bit unlikely though, because if such a thing did exist, then Big Mom probably wouldn't have had too much trouble recruiting one to inseminate her, which that's a thought. So it feels a lot like a king-style situation with the Lunarians, a rare species thought to be extinct, and if they are, then I imagine that's probably the doing of humans, by the way. Filthy humans. I get a real Fishman kind of racial tension from the way that Kaido speaks in this chapter, and that might even go some way towards explaining why he's so set on just thrusting the world into eternal war, because, why not? It also might be why he's so insistent on collecting various beasts for his crew, because humans, they might be a bit of a sore spot. Oh no. Is this the seed of a super tragic Kaido flashback? All of a sudden, I'm picturing a very startling scenario where we get a proper sob story of like a 5-year-old Kaido witnessing his entire Oni village or whatever being slaughtered, and maybe that's what set him down this path of pure darkness. But this whole Oni business would appear to solve a lingering mystery. Back in chapter 951, Big Mom stated that there were three races that were not yet incorporated into Totterland. And now I feel like we have all three. One was obviously the Giants, another in that same chapter was pointed out to be King's race, and now we have the third because I don't think that any of the Charlotte siblings had any Oni characteristics. Maybe Galette, she had horns, I suppose. Not really Oni horns though. Not really impressive horns in any respect. Although come to think of it, I suppose this means that Black Maria might also be an Oni or part Oni. I don't know. We shall see. But another great part about this chapter was expanding on the Yamato flashback. It's actually starting to give me some pretty serious Robin vibes. You know, the whole deal of being on the run your entire life with everyone against you, and the few who are on your side being both frequently and brutally brutally murdered. Is it just me, or does Kaido sound a lot like Spandam in this chapter? Big Daddy Oni Man rambling about running and being alone, it all just takes me right back to any sloppy with Spandam berating Robin about the exact same thing, and to just accept her role in life, which in that case was non-existent. She had no role, she had to die. In any case, it's all really depressing in many, many ways, but it does make modern day Yamato that much more impressive. The fact that a person, or I guess an Oni, or maybe even an Odin, can have such a positive attitude and hope for the world after experiencing 2 decades of not much else other than complete raw despair. I don't know if it's quite at the point of Straw Hat Crew joining Flashback, but then again, what even is that anymore? I mean, Jinbei's flashback was more or less him just being there in the background whilst the stories of Fisher Tiger and Otohime played out. But something I found very fascinating was the continuation of the fight between Kaido and Yamato. Yamato pulled out this very fun defensive technique, like a sort of generated thin body armor. I know people don't necessarily like when I compare One Piece to other series, but this was, well, it was very Gaara-like. And at this stage, I'm assuming that it's the result of mythical devil fruit shenaniganry, but I'm also wondering if it might be an innate Oni ability. I mean, if we're having a whole new race, then they'll probably have some sort of power gimmick, like the Minks do with Electro, Lunarians do with fire conjuring, and the Long Arm tribe do with being able to reach things that are like really far away. And Kaido does seem quite familiar with it, although that's more or less meaningless. If it was a fruit ability, he'd be quite aware of it by now. And I guess if this fruit is meant to represent like a guardian deity of Wano, then having an innate defensive technique does also make sense. Next up, we have a fun One Piece moment with Luffy and Momonosuke. And what I mean by fun One Piece moment is the juxtaposition between this chapter and the last time we saw them. We left this duo looking all badass and epic, ready to take down the Kaido guy. And then the very next time we see them, the big scary dragon is cowering on the ground, probably soiling himself, whilst Luffy berates him. For lack of a better term, it's a very One Piece thing to do. Set up something cool and just subvert it into goofiness. I really liked it though because Momonosuke, obviously he's not mentally mature. This is a big dragon with the mind of a very small human. Although to Momo's complete credit, the moment where he did finally open his eyes was when Kaido's name was mentioned, and that is massive because Kaido is Momo's greatest fear, and here he is actually facing Kaido head on. That was really impressive, and full credit to Momonosuke for finally pulling himself together when it mattered the most. Which of course leads to his great declaration that he will become the Shogun of Wano in a very Luffy Pirate King manner. But I actually think my favorite moment of the chapter was when Kaido and Momo came face to face, pretty much exactly as I predicted. Now this is pretty much exactly as I predicted. I don't even need to show the panel because this really does say it all, except I will show the panel because it's pretty unbelievably stunning. Like when you were first starting One Piece and the story was about a rubber boy fighting an obese cowboy, could you ever have predicted that we'd be in a situation where that boy is riding a dragon into battle against another bigger and bluer dragon? This series has just taken so many crazy turns and I love it. But I think the best panel of the chapter is almost certainly this one of Yamato in the foreground being all super serious and stuff, you know, as if the fate of the world was on the line, which to be fair it kind of is. But then in the background we just have this derpy dragon going ugh. Also, Kaido has some very apt words to cap off the chapter. He's a very jealous Oni when you think about it. He sees someone else using Conqueror's Haki and he's just like, we don't need any more conquering people. And now he sees another dragon and he says the exact same thing. And Kaido, IMO, is 100% jealous because he's now lost his USP. His unique selling proposition has evaporated in seconds because now everyone's a conqueror, and there's also even a cheaper, smaller, artificially produced new model dragon. Kaido is officially defunct technology. He's very right though. We don't have room for more dragons. One Piece has too many dragons as it is, especially dragons that aren't even literal dragons. I'm looking at you, dragon. So I propose that we do get rid of one, and I propose that that one be Kaido. For the most underrated moment of the chapter though, did we all see when Luffy used Snake Man, or did we need to bring out our magnifying glasses? All right, this is genuinely insane. I am reading this chapter on, you can't see it, but it's like a 27-inch monitor, and I can still barely see the Snake Man. It's just a little squiggle in the vague shape of Luffy. I like that Oda does stuff like this though, because the purpose of understating the presence of Snake Man is to really build and emphasize the combination attack shown on the very next page. And if you have this sort of fancy transformation shot, then you've got to escalate that punch even more. Make it more epic, more satisfying, more climactic. So these assortment of squiggles on a dragon is Oda deliberately holding back to make his job easier on the next page. But even so, this is crazy. This is the first time that we've seen Snake Man since February 2018, and I have to say it brings me a giant wave of whole cake snake-flavored nostalgia. I do wonder why Luffy chose to use Snake Man, even very briefly though. It's a curious decision because Luffy never elected to use this form in his previous clashes with Kaido, and I would have thought that it wouldn't be particularly ideal. Sacrificing power for speed probably isn't the greatest victory formula versus Kaido. However, what it does show is that we are getting very narratively serious now. You can always tell that big things are about to happen when a shonen protagonist has exhausted all of their previous forms, because it means that they need to come up with a new path to victory. I should also say that I'm surprised that Luffy has reached Kaido so quickly. We still very much have a king, queen, and a jack to deal with, in addition to some sort of large mother and a man who likes to play with dollies. Not that there's anything wrong with that, that's just what he is. So I do wonder if Oda is going to be tinkering with the arc climax formula, because it does feel like this is the final round of Luffy versus Kaido. It's the third time, so any more delays and breaks leading to a fourth round, that would be getting quite excessive. But there is still undeniably a lot left to mop up on Onigashima before we get to any sort of final battle. So perhaps we're in for a very extended conflict between Luffy and Kaido. Perhaps something to rival the length of Luffy versus Katakuri. Now, quite a hefty chunk of the old chapter, however, was taken up with Momonosuke's hilarious tour of Onigashima. This was really fun. There's always something quite endearing about seeing people's reactions to Luffy doing stupid Luffy things, but also it was a very handy device to tie what remains of Onigashima together. We got to go through all of the major locations, floor by floor by floor, until we eventually reached the not floor, which is the roof. And it was kind of like a condensed journey of the raid so far, like a much faster version of when Luffy was running through all the floors. And actually, it also very much mirrors how Kinemon and the vassals got up to the roof as well, because they just rode Kaido like all the way to the top, which is exactly what Luffy's doing right now with Momo. So there's a lot of very nice elements being tied together here in a process that I can really only describe as quite satisfying. And of course, to the color spread now. This week we have the third and final part of the World Top 100 spread, and it is every bit as magnificent as the previous two. This one includes our much missed world government characters, as well as a couple of departed favorites. But there is a lot I like about this, such as the positioning of Ace and Sabo. There's a very clear sense of symmetry happening here, obviously. Both brothers of Luffy, both with the same fruit powers, and now both assuming the same general pose. However, the really clever and subtle thing that Oda has done is change up the fire fists. Ace's is in the foreground, while Sabo's is in the background. And in a way, it creates this fun sort of yin-yang effect. And I really prefer this because I suspect that lesser mangaka would have been tempted to keep pushing that symmetry and have both fire fists in the foreground, which may border on the really, the sort of tacky side of things. What is this look on Sabo's face? He looks pretty cocky for a guy who got his butt handed to him at a certain reverie. Another thing I love is the positioning of Marco and Whitebeard. Marco is very much acting as the protector of his mustached master here, and it looks as if we were to let the scene play out for a few more seconds, he may even land on Whitebeard's shoulder like the very clever birdie he is. But here we finally have it. All three color spreads combined to craft one mega spread. This is something that I need to source in as high a quality as possible, have it printed out on some sort of gigantically long canvas, and just hang on an entire wall somewhere. I don't know where, my place is not that big, but it's easily my favorite color spread in the entire lifespan of One Piece so far. And for one of my favorite videos on One Piece, there's this one, I suppose, because there's always more to learn, explore, and experience with this wonderful series, so I look forward to seeing you there.